From the clash of ancient shields to the roar of modern artillery, humanity's story is etched in conflict. Every battle, every skirmish, every strategic masterstroke has carved its mark upon the world we know today. We will journey across continents and centuries, from the deserts of Kadesh, where chariots once thundered, to the muddy fields of Europe, where empires were won and lost. We'll explore the pivotal moments that shaped nations, the brilliant tactics that turned the tide, and the incredible sacrifices made on the front lines. This isn't just about dates and names, it's about the pulse of combat, the weight of command, and the human stories behind the greatest struggles in history. Welcome to Battles Through History. Subscribe now and prepare to witness the past come alive like never before.
Imagine a name that for over 200 years struck absolute terror into the hearts of nations. That name was Assyria. From their capital, the mighty Nineveh, the largest, most magnificent city the world had ever seen, their armies marched. They were masters of war, conquering with a brutality that became legendary. They flayed their enemies, deported entire populations by the millions, and built an empire on fear. But empires built on terror rarely last forever. By the year 612 BCE, the once invincible Assyrian war machine was sputtering. The giant had grown weak, its limbs strained by internal revolts and constant warfare, and all around them the ghosts of their past victims were stirring. The conquered were coming back, not for tribute, not for territory, but for pure, unadulterated vengeance. The stage was set for one of history's most dramatic and decisive collapses. On one side, we have the defending power, the Neo-Assyrian Empire. At its helm was its final king, a man whose name is etched into the end of an era, Cyaxares. He was the inheritor of a legacy of dominance, now tasked with defending it against a world that wanted it erased. On the other side, a coalition fueled by generations of hatred. This wasn't just one rival, it was a powerful alliance of former subjects. Leading the charge were the Medes, a formidable force from the Iranian plateau, commanded by their king Set. Alongside them were the Babylonians, also known as the Chaldeans, led by a cunning and determined general named Nabopolassar. Their goal was simple and terrifyingly clear, not just to defeat Assyria, but to annihilate it, to wipe the very name from the face of the earth. The armies of Media and Babylonia began their inexorable march, converging on the jewel of the Assyrian Empire, the great city of Nineveh. The final siege was about to begin. Nineveh wasn't just a city, it was a statement, a fortress engineered to be unconquerable. Its defenses were the stuff of legend. Imagine approaching it. First, you'd face a deep, wide moat, a formidable obstacle in itself. If you crossed that, you'd be met by a massive outer wall, bristling with defenders. And even if you breached that, you'd then have to face the inner wall, even taller, even stronger, looming over you. The entire eastern flank of the city was protected by the natural barrier of the Tigris River, making a direct assault from that direction nearly impossible. When the coalition forces of the Medes and Babylonians arrived, they knew this would be no swift victory. They stared at those impregnable walls and prepared for a long, grueling fight. They set up their camps, established their siege lines, and began the arduous process of building massive earthen ramps to try and assail the walls. The siege began in May of 612 BCE for 3 brutal months. The air was filled with the sounds of war. The invaders battered the gates with rams, launched projectiles from their siege engines, and made desperate attempts to scale the walls. But the Assyrian defense was ferocious. They were fighting for their very existence, and they made the attackers pay for every inch of ground. The summer dragged on through June, July, and into August. The siege ground to a bloody stalemate. It seemed Nineveh might just live up to its reputation and withstand the assault. But then, something happened that no military engineer could have fully predicted. The gods, or perhaps just the weather, decided to intervene. According to ancient accounts, the breakthrough came not from a siege engine or a clever tactic, but from the sky itself. That summer, the heavens opened up, unleashing unusually heavy and relentless rains. The Tigris River, the city's great protector, began to swell. It surged against its banks, rising higher and higher until it became a raging torrent. The immense pressure of the floodwaters began to eat away at the foundations of Nineveh's mighty walls. Then, with a catastrophic roar, a huge section of the supposedly impregnable outer wall, undermined by the flood, collapsed into the churning water. For the defenders, this was a psychological catastrophe. The very river that had guarded their city for centuries had betrayed them. It was seen as a terrible omen, a sign that the gods themselves had abandoned Assyria. For the besieging army, it was the miracle they had been waiting for. They watched in astonishment as the river carved a gateway directly into the heart of the enemy fortress. Without a moment's hesitation, the Median and Babylonian soldiers charged, pouring through the breach like a vengeful flood of their own. Once the walls were breached, the end came with shocking speed and savagery. The Medes and Babylonians, their minds filled with stories of Assyrian cruelty passed down through generations, were not there to conquer, they were there to destroy. They unleashed a wave of violence that mirrored the very terror the Assyrians had once inflicted upon them. The fighting raged through the magnificent streets, avenues, and grand plazas of the world's greatest city. They showed no mercy. The Babylonian Chronicle, a historical record from the time, puts it chillingly. They turned the city into a ruin heap. Imagine the chaos palaces, filled with treasures plundered from 100 conquered lands, were looted and set ablaze. The great statues of the Lamasutha iconic winged bulls with human heads that guarded the palace gates were toppled and smashed. What happened to King Cyaxares? His exact fate is lost to history, but it's believed he met his end in the Inferno. He either died fighting in the chaos, or, seeing all was lost, chose to commit suicide by throwing himself into the flames of his burning palace. A final, defiant act of a fallen king. The destruction was methodical. The city was meticulously pillaged, its wealth carried off, and then everything that could burn was set on fire. The inferno was so intense it baked the clay tablets of the royal libraries, ironically preserving them for future archaeologists to discover. The razing was so absolute that when the smoke cleared, Nineveh was gone. For centuries afterward, the location of the great city was lost to memory. Travelers would pass by the strange, silent mounds of earth on the banks of the Tigris, never realizing that beneath their feet lay the ruins of what was once the capital of the world. The fall of Nineveh in 612 BCE was more than just the end of a city. It was the death blow to the Neo-Assyrian Empire. It was a complete geopolitical demolition that sent shockwaves across the ancient world. With Assyria erased from the map, a massive power vacuum was created. The victors were quick to fill it. The Neo-Babylonian Empire under Nabopolassar and his famous successor Nebuchadnezzar II rose to become the new dominant power in Mesopotamia. The Medes expanded their own empire, which would eventually merge with the Persians to create an even larger and more influential superpower. The fall of Nineveh fundamentally reset the map of the ancient Near East. One of the most feared empires in history had vanished, leaving behind little more than a ruin heap and a powerful lesson about the fleeting nature of power built on fear. The terror was over, but the world it had shaped would never be the same again. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey into the past as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more deep dives into history's most pivotal moments. We'll see you in the next one.
Thank you for journeying with us through the echoes of history's most pivotal battlefields. We hope this exploration into the past has been as insightful for you as it was for us to create. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please show your support by hitting that like button. It truly helps us out. Share this video with any fellow history buffs you know, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel, Battles Through History, for more epic tales. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when we march into our next chapter. We love hearing from you, so drop your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, keep the spirit of exploration alive.